You're listening to The Broken Meeple Show, a podcast that speaks passionately about board games for the benefit of those who play them. My name's Luke Hector, best known for the Broken Meeple YouTube channel, and I'm an everyday gamer just like you. And I'll be talking about reviews, top 10s, and just about anything that connects me to board games. As long as I have a tea or coffee in hand, that is. So grab a cup, relax, and enjoy. And remember, it's only a game. Hello everybody, Happy New Year. This is, 2025, and the podcast has returned. Mainly because I remembered, it's a Sunday and I probably should get one done. Last Sunday, obviously, I was, fresh back from, New Year and 2 days of work and stuff. So it was like, it seemed a little bit early to grab a podcast, really. So I thought, okay, I'll wait till the next week. And then yesterday, I went to a gaming event that lasted most of the day. And in an hour, I need to head over to another gaming event, which has started up again in the Hive Tap Room Brewery. I think it's called Vibrant Forest Brewery or something. It's used to be a Sunday event. It happened once a month. You get to go there, have a couple of good beers, and play some games. Bit of a trek from where I live to get there, but it's a decent little social event. And that's today. So that's going to take up half my day, especially with the travel time. But then I realized, I need to get a podcast out. So I'm sort of recording this in the morning before I go, and then I'll probably edit it when I get back. So it'll probably be a bit late airing, or maybe I'll just wait till Monday to air it. We'll see. But yes, my day's a little bit sporadic, and I'm quite busy at the moment, but in a good way. What happened over the holidays? I went off on that 2-week Norway cruise, which if you saw some of my photos on Instagram or just like heard me talk about it, then maybe you're on my Facebook and that. So it really was good. The Norway cruise was just what I needed. I ticked so many things off my box, like, snowmobile, husky dog sledding, ice fishing, snowshoe trekking, that kind of thing, and saw some great sights, saw the Aurora Borealis several times, got to just see what it's like at minus 20 degrees with decent snow. Our country in the UK at the moment has had a little bit of sleet in the south and a bit of snow in the north, and suddenly everything's like shutting down, people are gridlocking roads or something. We are truly pathetic when it comes to the winter or something. And yet Norway, in Alter, in the Arctic Circle, is basically just, it's nearly perpetual darkness. Everything is caked in snow. Most electric vehicles won't work properly, but we just get on with it. Seriously, credit to the Arctic Circle Norwegian folk. But honestly, the fact that they give you incentives to go and live there or something. If I was 20 years younger and there was actually an opportunity, I could have actually seen myself going over to live in Norway, I think, because I think just that. I like cold areas. I don't mind cold areas, but the scenery in Norway when you go out and see the mountains and all the river and the lakes and stuff is just so nice. I really like it. So anyway, it was a good cruise. Met some good people. Had some fun. I was kind of done by about 10, 11 days into the 2-week period. I think 2 weeks is kind of my limit for a holiday, really, before I start not getting homesick, but wanting to get out and thinking I've done enough, I'm good. And the seas were certainly pretty choppy, so that didn't exactly help either. But I went away, reset. My colleague at work managed to do a great job with all my clients that I had to deal with, handing over. So I even bought her a bottle of wine to thank her for it. So, she deserved it, every drop of that wine. So I hope she enjoyed it. But I thought I was going to come back to like a massive stressful thing, and I really haven't. There's still plenty of work to do, and I'm not out of the woods yet, but we've got people return from maternity leave. We've got new people, joined, and our capacity has now been widened so that, our individual client list, we can spread out to more people. I haven't got so many hard deadlines at the moment, like in December, where it just all comes together. So I've actually come back to a relatively stress-free work environment, certainly compared to the last 6 months of 2024, where it was just stress city, particularly for September through to December. I was like hitting burnout levels. So going away on the holiday was exactly the cure I needed, on top of going to the family in Somerset for Christmas and all that lot. So a much needed break from gaming in general, frankly, because I also needed to just take a break from that end of the scale. And now I return fresh-minded, new outlook, new stuff, new desire to get things sorted out at work, just generally in a pretty decent state. So in terms of the channel while I was gone obviously didn't exactly release anything I released a couple of speed reviews over the course of the cruise, but nothing to a great extent. But, you know, I have now got back into the swing of things. So we already have the 2 big reviews for Shackleton Base and Andromeda's Edge doing pretty well. Thank you for the feedback on those. The top games of 24 has finally been released. Here we go. So, you know, 15,000 views, 96% likes, you know, yeah, 28 people who think that I should have put Arcs at the top of the list or something, or Civolution, but, you know, all in all, that's doing pretty well. I mean, look at the amount of comments. Loads of people just engaging. That's what I like to see. And a recent speed review, well, I say speed review, it hit the 20-minute mark. I know it went a little bit over, but, you know, I'm trying to keep them short. But for Canopy Evergreen, which is another fun little game, although quite amusing that I have some people sort of go, and it's like, oh, you only like games if they look pretty. And it's like, I can think of a few games on my shelf where the aesthetics are not quite up to par, and yet I still like them, you know. And they'll say, oh, you only like light games as well because you haven't liked some of the heavier titles this year. What you mean? I haven't liked some of the bone dry, dull, and boring Euros that 2024 was populated by? No. Funny enough, no. You know, a lot of people ask me if I played a game called Men the Fur or something like that. And I mean, honestly, I have no idea what Men the Fur is. Also, when I first heard the title, I thought that sounds like the most generic title ever. What on earth is Men the Fur? And I'm looking at it and it says, okay, what we got here? Travel to the capital of ancient Egypt and take part in the development of its culture. Okay, if this was a Civ game on Egypt, I would probably have a look. But then you look at the box cover and it looks pretty much identical to every Egyptian theme game ever. The title means nothing to me if I don't know what Men the Fur is. And then you actually take a look at the board itself, and I'll give it credit. I have seen much uglier Euro games than this. This one is actually relatively pretty, even though there's not really much to look at. I mean, you essentially have the pieces of players, a river and a bunch of yellow sand and then all that. But even so, as much as this one is not, you know, a bad looking game, it just looks also quite generic. I mean, I'm seeing tracks, I'm seeing bits for tokens, I'm seeing a little grid here in the middle. And I'm just like, oh, great. Is this like another dry Euro? Now, I mean, I'd have to try it to see if I like it, but it kind of gives me vibes of Ezra and Nehemiah or something. I mean, this little thing in the top here looks like a gimmick, a mini gimmick version of the pyramid from Teotihuacan. So you've got the pieces to build it. Yeah, it looks pretty, but I mean, we're putting symbols on top of symbols and we're going to get points if we match the symbols. I mean, you know, all these really dry mechanics that don't make any thematic sense, but I would still try any game once. So I didn't see this at Essen. I mean, this is a 24 picture at Essen. I never saw this game. Where the hell was this being sold? I mean, who published this one? Men the Fur was Ludenova. I must admit, I didn't go around their booth because Ludenova and Pegasus Spiel don't tend to release a lot that I'm interested in. But, I mean, I'd give it a look. I'd play it. I'll play any game once and see. Maybe it could win me over. But everything I read here sounds just very generic. You know, we've seen these mechanics before. I get the idea that it's either a point salad or some kind of you know, big points fest or something, and which kind of means, yeah, they're gonna like it. But I mean, yeah, it may be a heavy game. I like heavy games fine, but I mean, if they're generic and uninspiring, then it's only going to go so far with me. I'll probably like it and then go, yeah, that's another point dry Euro, but where's the unique innovation in it? But as I say, I want to try it. So anybody at HandyCon or that has this game wants to show me it, by all means, I'd be happy to jump in. But, you know, that's the sort of feedback I've definitely had on some fronts. But yeah, you know, 4 videos out there, by sure, check them out. But thank you, everybody. This happened overnight, so I haven't done a Facebook announcement or anything like that. But the channel reached a milestone. It has reached 25,000 views. Views? Sorry, views. That's pathetic. 25,000 subs. We breached it. It's on 25,004 at the moment, so it shouldn't dip back down below it. But thank you, everybody. I mean, this is another milestone. On the way to 30,000, I guess, you know, we'll go for the next, we'll basically do the milestones in 5,000 batches. But yeah, it's a big milestone, 25. It's kind of like that level where, you know, because when you get past 25, a lot of channels that you see tend to be now in the 40 to 60 range. So there's quite a gap between the 25 to 40 marks. There's not a huge amount outside. There's very few that I can think of, if any, that are in the 30s. I think most are 40 plus or less than 30. So yeah, there just seems to be that sort of like graveyard area in the middle there. But I'm just grateful that everybody that watches the show gives positive feedback. Yeah, some people give negative feedback, but as long as it's constructive, I don't mind. It's when they turn it into personal flame attacks, that's when it gets personal. But and I don't like it. But for those who watch and for those who engage, I mean, by all means, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you watch the videos but haven't subbed, please sub, because it all helps. The algorithm, it all helps engagement and stuff. But by all means, comment on the videos. Tell me if you like the game. Tell me if you hate the game. What are your thoughts? Even if I can't respond to every single comment, I will certainly try to respond to as many as I can. And, I'm grateful to see the comments. I still at least read them. It's difficult to find the time to respond to every single comment because there's a lot of comments. I mean, 200 plus comments, that'll take ages to respond to every single one. But I still at least read them. So it is good to, get that level of engagement. But yeah. As for what I'm going to start bringing out soon, there will be speed reviews for stuff like, beyond the base game, I hope to do like an Ancient Heritage expansion to, what you call it, I forget the name it's based on. I'm looking at the box here, but I forget what it's called, Forbidden Knowledge or something like that. But, that expansion review, there's going to be speed reviews for a couple of Empress 4 games I still haven't done. Station to Station by Alley Cat Games I need to do a speed review for. I might do a speed review for Reef Project by Board and Dice. I don't know. I only bought it on a whim. I don't know if I've got time to do a full review for it. But there's other little bits and bobs that I'm trying to just mop. Oh yeah, Undergrove by Alderac. I never got around to doing that before Christmas, so I hope to do a speed review for that. So yeah, I'm basically mopping up games that I couldn't review before Christmas and my cruise and getting them done this month. But I also have to think about the top 100 question mark list. Yes, I'm actually thinking of doing things a bit differently this time because I've taken on a lot of feedback from the whole top 100 and stuff like that in the past, especially when I said this is when I'm going to do it. And there does seem to be a lot of feedback from people saying that I'm kind of bored with top 100s now, or we don't really need to see 100, we just need to see 25 or 50. And it's happening more and more as each year goes on. And I must admit, the more I think about it, the more I'm kind of in that setting as well. Because when other people release their top 100 lists, I find myself more drawn to the top 50 than the top 100. And, even like the Dice Tower ones and stuff like that. So maybe I should actually take that on board. So I think what I'm actually executive decision going to do this time is restrict it to 50. I don't think I'll go as low as 25. I think that's maybe cutting out a few too many games there. But I think the absolute max is I'll do a top 50. So we'll do, say, the 26 to 50 relatively quickly. Maybe do it in one video, maybe do it in two, or maybe I'll do 2 batches of 15 to get it to 20 and then do 2 batches of 10 to do the top 20. But I think that will do because the top 100 takes a lot of time to compile that list. It takes ages to do the stats, ages to do 10 plus videos. Top 10 lists are my favorite videos to do. They are also the most time consuming. I mean, you see some channels out there that literally just switch the camera on, talk, and that's it. That's their video. It takes 10 minutes to edit the video and they just shove it up. I mean, low effort. But or low, well, I suppose low effort is kind of harsh, low time consuming. It's not very time consuming. But the videos that I do for the top 10s, I mean, they've got the video clips, they've got the music, they've got the lighting changes, to make certain it's not too dark, not too bright. They've got, and in every single segment of 10, you've got that lower third, you've got the animated number, which is separate, that is plugged in on top. You've got the picture that has to be aligned and zoomed, to make certain it's not unclear. You've then got the text in the lower third for the game and the publisher to put in and resize. Then the pictures go in, they've got their own formatting thing to make certain that they're at the side of the screen and not covering my face, and they're in at the right times. The joke clips get inserted in, so I have to watch the footage and go, oh, a joke would work quite nicely there, or a video clip would work good nicely there, and bolt those in. And all sorts have to be done just for each segment of the top 10. So doing that 10 times in the video, plus 10 times over again, is quite time consuming. So The idea is that if I do 50, I should be able to keep it down to, say, 4 videos, absolute max 5 videos, and that would make it a little bit easier to do. And plus, people will probably be like, you know what, I want to hear about your top 50 games. I didn't desperately need to hear about this, the 100 to 60 to 51 or whatever. So I'm taking the feedback on board. I kind of agree with you lot. So yeah, I will do that. There will be top 50 soon, but not top 100. It's too much. And like I say, it'll be more of a shift, because then you'll be able to see the games that fall off my top 50 games are probably going to be more impactful as to talk about than what fell off my top 100. You know, who cares what happened between 100 and 101? Seeing what was previously 36, now no longer in my top 50 games, would probably mean more. So hopefully you'll enjoy that. Anyway, we're on to 15 minutes already, and I've just been giving updates on everything else. So let's get on with what I want to talk about. So first up, let's talk about a game I played recently. It's pretty small, so this shouldn't take too long. It's called 5211. Can anybody answer why the hell this is called 5211? I have no idea why it's called this. It re-implements a game called 5 Colors. Okay, that explains the 5. What's the 211 thing? I honestly don't get what this title is. Oh, take a drink there. But it's a Japanesey game, so Japanese designer and stuff. I'm pretty sure it's to that. Tsuyoshi Hashiguchi. That's got to be Japanese, surely. Let's see the publisher. Maybe that will tell me. Next move, Asmodee, Glenos, Pegasus, Plan B, and Svedda. All right, that didn't tell me jack. I think it's a Japanese game from what I've heard. But this one is, essentially a small filler game. So looks pretty on the backs, and somebody offered to play it with me on the last couple of game nights. So we played a few games of this now, and basically what it all boils down to are these colored cards, and they've got point values between 1 and 6, but obviously in different distributions. And the idea is that you have a hand of 5 cards, and I think it's 4 or 5 cards, and you play 2 cards out on the first turn, then 1 card, then 1 card. So you've played 4 cards out in a round, and everybody's doing this in turn. But what happens is the scoring is the value on the cards, but the colors are important. So when you finish the round, based on player count, if there's too many of a certain color out, that color doesn't score at all, and it moves on to the next majority color to score. Only the largest color scores. But then if there's a tiebreaker between the top 2, none of them score, and it goes to the next color down. So you're kind of trying to influence the game state so that the colors are in such a quantity, in such a way that you'll benefit the most. And you rinse and repeat this until the deck runs out, and then score up the points. There's a little, what I would like to say is a bit of a tacked on mechanic in this, where some of the yes, here we go. Some of the cards have got these little, they're called Kododo lizards, or sorry, Kododos on there. And basically, if you get 6 of them out, or again, depending on player count, you get a certain amount of them out, then all the colors don't score, and you just score the lizards for a point each. And, it's a little side thing. I've seen it happen once in all the hands we've done, so this is not something that happens on a common basis. But the whole idea of, I've wondered, what the hell are you on about with a Kododo? Did you not mean Komodo, as in the Komodo? But no, apparently a Kododo is a real thing. No, that's not it. Okay, seriously, do you know how long it took me to find this? If you Google Kododo, it doesn't come up with anything, because it imagines that you are finding Komodo dragon. It automatically assumes it with the AI and stuff. So this was a pain. So I had to actually find a copy of the rulebook. Thank you to Ultra Board Games blog for actually having the rulebook here written out. A Kododo is a beautiful turquoise-colored lizard found on the islands of Curaçao and Aruba. Great, you learn something new every day, but cool, blimey, was it hard trying to find that. Okay, back to the plot. So 5211. This game, is fine, but it is kind of devoid of a lot of decision making for the most of it. I like the scoring system where, like, you've got to think, all right, are the colors about to are you about to screw over on the colors? Are you going to score? Are you about to get screwed out on that? But the fact of the matter is, you draw the cards randomly from the deck. So some rounds you just have a hand that does not work. You could be going last in a round. And by the way, the rulebook does not have an explanation for how you do turn order. I'm serious. The rulebook literally does not tell you how to decide the first player. That is an utter fail. Okay, at the start of the game, you can just do it randomly, fine, but the game should explain how it then works for the rest of the round, because there is a clear advantage to going last compared to going straight first. But the rulebook doesn't explain. So we play it where one person is first player and then it just rotates round. But for crying out loud, you couldn't find room in your rulebook to explain that major aspect of the game. That is an utter fail. But, I digress. The gameplay is okay. You might find yourself, though, where somebody puts out 2 orange, somebody else puts out 2 green, another person puts out a green and an orange, and your hand doesn't have anything of green and orange. Well, then you are basically just wasting the hand, and nothing you do is going to matter to it. And this can happen more often than not. But it's really just based on your hand of cards. I mean, you could just draw the worst cards for the game. And also, these point values range from 1 to 6. Now, there's not that many cards that are priced at 4, 5, and 6. Most of them are 1, 2, and 3. But if you don't draw any of the 5s and 6s, then your score is capped because you just can't score a lot for your cards. Yeah, I won this round, but I've only got 1s and 2s. So what am I supposed to do? Whereas you managed to jump in on a colour by fluke that is winning the round, and you had a 6. So even though I had 3 cards to contribute to this colour, I actually get less points than you because you were fluky enough to draw a 6. So that doesn't make any sense. Why weren't the point values closer together? Why weren't they just 1 to 4, or 2 to 3, 2 to 4, or something like that? I don't get why 1 to 6 was deemed a good idea. So the game just kind of lacks a lot of decision making, and it lacks much in the way of fairness with, luck mitigation or anything. So it does the job as a filler, and I don't hate it. I don't mind it, but it just has very limited scope. I don't like playing it with too many players because I think too many players just adds to the luck factor. So I feel like you're best playing this with a cap of 4. 3 player works all right. So I think 3 or 4 is kind of best. I think 2 is probably too low and 5 is too many. But yeah, I mean, it's fine. It does the job, and I like the quirkiness with the scoring system in this, but I just think the luck mitigation is too low, even for a filler, and I think that, the fact that you are just restricted to that hand of 4 cards and you could just have a round where you can't do anything, it just seems a little bit, it's meh. It's fine, I'll play it if you put it on the table, but overall I just found this one, okay at best. Straight afterwards, we played a game of Love Letter, and I instantly had more fun with that. So sometimes the old ones are the best ones. But yeah, it was interesting to try it, because I like trying out some of these, Asian quirky card games, because you do get some utter gems in there sometimes. This one just wasn't particularly one of them. All right, let's talk about, I hate to have to talk about this, because it feels like I'm just contributing to the, the hype and all the things surrounding it, but let's talk about Finspan. Oh boy. This has been doing the rounds lately, hasn't it? This is Stonemaier's recent announcement, and bearing in mind, Stonemaier may not necessarily lately be the best at game design. I mean, let's face it, Charterstone, Expeditions, Apiary, Pendulum, Stamp Swap, I heard that was pretty bad, Yeah, they're not exactly doing great lately with their game choices. And Wormspan, basically just rehashing Wingspan but making it worse. But they are very good at business decisions. When it comes to generating hype for their games or getting online awareness, they clearly have done their homework as to how to manipulate people and how to get, social media completely going crazy over their stuff. So fair play, I can't fault them from a business perspective. They are a business at the end of the day, and they clearly know their stuff. I'm kind of slightly jealous of that. But, in terms of game design, it's certainly been lacking. But this, I think, is going a little bit too far. Okay, it was bad enough with Wormspan. At least you could say it began with a W. So from Wingspan, it was Wormspan, and then at least dragons have wings. So you could kind of argue that as a spin-off, that fine. But Finspan. And I had to really double take. I honestly thought this was an early April Fool's joke. I didn't even believe it was a thing at first. And then I saw so many threads on it, and then I saw this page, and it's like, oh god, no, you are legitimately doing this, aren't you? You really are doing this. Wow. Okay. So, on the one hand, I like fish. I'm totally down for learning about more fish and seeing pictures of good fish. I'm totally on board with that. I think as a theme, I think this will be pretty cool. Finspan is probably the worst attempt to come up with a reason that this is a rehashed version of Wingspan ever. I mean, the amount of memes that are going around with X-Span, literally like flogging a dead horse span and all this stuff that I've seen, it's ridiculous. The memes are all over the place. Like I said, they're good at business, not necessarily game design. But yeah, the amount of memes is just getting a little bit ridiculous now. Like I literally can't turn on Facebook without seeing a ton of these memes going around, and it's getting tiresome already, and it hasn't even been 24 hours or something since I started looking. It's just a kind of a mixed bag like that. Now, it's got some things going for it. I mean, 45 to 60 minutes length, so it thinks it's going to be shorter than Wingspan, although Wingspan's typically only about 60 to 75 minutes in length when you play it with people who don't AP like crazy. So 5 minutes setup time, I'll be the judge of that, because very few games set up in 5 minutes in fact that come out of a box. So, yeah, I'm a bit hazy on that. And 1 to 5 players, let's just assume it's a 1 to 4 player game. Let's assume it's 2 to 4 with a variant for solo, and 5 is too many, because pretty much all the cases 5 is too many. So what exactly is this going to be? Well, let's see. You're a marine researcher seeking to observe an array of aquatic life in the colourful sunlight zone, midnight zone, and twilight zone of the world's seas and oceans. I wasn't aware that they were split up into zones like this. Again, you learn something every day. In Finspan, God, I hate that name, the fish you discover over 4 weeks will generate a series of benefits as you dive deeper into the ocean. So, okay, so when you look at the board, I mean, yes, it looks gorgeous. I mean, I want these player boards now, even just from a prototype copy. But you can definitely tell it's got the Wingspan formula in here. You have a tableau grid. You have things in rows, which clearly when you activate rows, they're going to get you bonuses. The fish and the fish tokens and these little other tokens you place on, presumably eggs. I suspect they're going to feature in a similar fashion to the other one. Or maybe it's a way of getting more fish, like hatchlings and stuff. But yeah, there's definitely elements of the Wingspan thing here. I mean, you can see the card layout. Yes, they're horizontal now instead of vertical, but you can see the iconography is very similar to what you would expect in Wingspan. Now, does that mean that I've already decided the game's going to be terrible? Of course not. I think that a lighter version of Wingspan, that's for an even more accessible audience, that teaches you about really nice looking fish, is certainly a lot better than a heavier version of Wingspan teaching you about fictional dragons. I mean, they came up with a lore book in that to explain what each of the dragons was. It's all made up. So what do I care about your lore book explaining your made-up dragons? But, a similar book to tell me about all these birds or these fish, much better, because at least these exist in real life. It's based on reality. I actually might get some learning out of this. I've already learned that apparently there's a twilight ghost, or was it a midnight twilight and sunlight zone? I don't know. Is that legit? Is there a fish expert that can tell me if that's legit? Maybe I've just latched onto that and assumed it was true. But, I got to be a little bit careful with that respect. So, could this be really good? I don't know. But it's World of Wingspan, so people are crying out cash grab. Even I'm kind of thinking cash grab, because this game may be really cool, but I think you could stop trying to associate everything with Wingspan. This kind of thing where you name something after a game that's done popular in an attempt to get the hype driven is a classic business cash grab tactic. It's one where you basically go, right, we don't reckon this game will stand alone on its own if we call it something unique in that, so therefore we need to just basically say it's related to a game that was stupidly popular and that will instantly generate hype. And it works as a business tactic, but it's also something that makes my eyes roll. This could have easily just been called its own thing. I mean, call it School of Fish, call it, anything remote, related to fish, but not Finspan. That is just stupid. And make it its own game. And it would look pretty, and I would give it a look. I would happily give it a play regardless. But the fact that you've basically tried to say, oh, it's another Wingspan rehash, it doesn't make me confident that you haven't just rehashed a lot of the mechanisms and not come up with anything new here. Or because it says familiar yet different mechanisms. Well, you said that about Wormspan, and yes, Wormspan certainly does feel pretty much like Wingspan with extra steps, but all the extra steps you shoved into Wormspan made the game worse than Wingspan. So I'm hoping that what you do here doesn't make Finspan ultimately worse than Wormspan, because that will be bad. I would like to see this be on the level of Wingspan, and that's a tall order, because Wingspan is one of my favorite games ever, and it is brilliant. If this one could be slightly, not as good as Wingspan, but still really, really awesome, I'm totally down for that. But Wormspan did not meet the the mark for me on that front. Check out my review for more honest details on that. So, will this be good? I certainly want to review it and play it. Apparently, this is getting released around January, or at least that's when you're supposed to be able to, like, that's when it's launching. Now, the only thing I'm a little bit concerned with is when it says launch on January 22nd, does that mean you can buy it from this website on the 22nd? Because if that's the case, then I'm wondering if that means you'd have to buy it from here and you would need to be, you'd have to be like one of their Stonemaier champions to get it cheap or something. I'll bet you £1,000,000 this has already been sent as a copy to the best friends of Stonemaier to basically give high popular reviews, verdicts for it. I'll bet you £1,000,000 that's already happened. But so, so definitely when you start seeing them appear, check who's done them. You'll know who I mean. But I definitely want to jump into this one. So I would like to get this game. I'd like to give it an honest review and hope it's really good. I hope, I mean, Wingspan. Stonemaier started off so well for me. Scythe, Viticulture, Wingspan, these were brilliant games. I still have them in my collection. Yes, Scythe's gone down a little bit, but Viticulture I still really love. Wingspan I still really love, and I want them to go back to that level of greatness. But lately, they just haven't been doing it. It's too much business tactics and less about good game design. And it's shown. It's really downed my opinion of their games. So I want to see them rise back up to, to greatness, and maybe this could be the start. As much as I hate the fact it's a Wingspan game with Finspan in that, whatever. Let's gloss over that and just jump into it with an open mind and hope that the game stands on its own merits rather than trying to piggyback off something else to be good. So yeah, we'll see. Hopefully people can stop it with the memes, because that's starting to get older very, very fast. But I will see if I can get a copy of this. I mean, if it releases in the UK around January, then you bet I'm going to buy a copy of this, because I bet you £1,000,000 I'm not getting a review copy of this one. So, I'll pay for it with my own money, and, try and get a review out as quick as possible, because I think we're going to need an honest review on this one, because I worry that there's going to be a lot of artificial hype for it. So we'll see. But I'm willing to be impressed. Please impress me. But man, Finspan, why? Just why? Okay, right. Let's go back to the topic of the day. I've got about 23 minutes before I need to start heading off. So, we'll try and keep this one relatively short. But an interesting premise turned up recently. I was playing a game of Dune Imperium. And Dune Imperium I find above average at best. And even then you need to throw in the second expansion for me to give it any more props than that. Because I like the Immortal expansion. I like the card system it throws in. It makes the deck building element more interesting. Where in the base game and even with the first expansion, the deck building simply isn't interesting enough. So it's all about the worker placement, and the worker placement is kind of boring. Not to mention your ability to actually go to where you want to go is entirely dependent on luck of the draw. People seem to miss this part. But I played the base game only of it recently, and I was teaching it to players. They were super AP, super long with their turns. The game took like 3 and a bit hours to finish the base game of Doom with 4 players. I nearly wanted to shoot myself. I was going mad. But, that's more the players rather than the game. Although, let's be honest, Dune Imperium is not the shortest game ever. Come on, guys. But the thing, something crossed my mind when I was talking about it. Dune Imperium is, probably one of the most ugliest games that has come out. It is, I'm sorry, whether you love Dune Imperium or not, fair play to you. But I do think it's overrated. I think 6 on Board Game Geek is just taking the chronic piss. But the game cover looks absolute dull as ditch water. I mean, oh, hang on, let me get the actual thing up. That would actually help. There we go. Yeah, I mean, that cover does not inspire you to buy the game at all. And then you get into the actual game itself, and you could argue that the artwork is passable, but I would say at most it's passable. And that's on the cards. But you've then got these cards here, which are just icons. And then you've got the board with the cubes and these little wooden pieces that are just dull. Like, it looks bland, it looks boring as anything. So the argument I had was, whether or not you love this game or not, I mean, fair play. If you love this game, then by all means, go love the game. But would you have loved it as much if it wasn't based on Dune? Because this came out with all the hype of the movies. And yes, I have watched both the Dune movies. The second one is fine. I don't know, actually. The first half of the second movie is still boring, but the second half at least picks up when, I don't want to say spoilers, a character goes through a slight transformation, and at that point it becomes more interesting. But the first half is still pretty bland and boring. The first movie put me to sleep. It, apart from like a couple of cool things with the voice and, you know, some half decent acting in some respects, man, the first film drags on and on. It's like 3.5 hours to tell me literally nothing. I mean, it's supposedly the first half of the first book, and I know the book's massive, but Jesus, get on with it. But I digress. So, you know, this came out with the popularity of the Dune movies. Would you have looked at this game if it wasn't attached to Dune? This is a question I'd like you to ask yourselves, because I don't think this game would have got anywhere near as much traction if it wasn't attributable to Dune. Now, the game is not the most thematic game in the world. You could have easily pasted some generic space theme on here, so it could have been any space thing you wanted. It didn't have to be Dune. But if they had done that, would you have given this the time of day? I'm willing to bet £1 million you would not, because the game just doesn't look inspiring. But because it had Dune on the title, everybody went towards it and then started playing it, and then, you know, some people hate it, some people like it. I mean, God, that looks so bland on that picture. But, you know, this all got me thinking, are there other games where the IP is the sole reason it's popular? Because you can imagine that some people, if this is a generic space theme on it, some people would have looked at this game and probably liked it and talked high praise of it, but I bet anything it wouldn't have got the distribution that it did. It wouldn't have got like the wider releases or anything. It wouldn't have got the expansions and stuff. You know, this would have kind of been popular with some people and then just died a slow death. You know, pretty positive of that. So, are there other games? Oh, that's a big, interesting word, miniature. But is there other games that would have also done this? So let's take a game that I really like. Okay, let's be fair. Let's take both sides of the story. Deep Rock Galactic. So, Deep Rock Galactic. This game, you know, is a game that I have praised. I think it's my favorite skirmish miniature game. It really is something I love. And part of this, maybe you could argue, is because I adore the video game. I still play the video game. I think I got a spare 20 minutes. I fancy doing a quick level, log on, favorite character is a scout, get on, play a game, could turn it off and go elsewhere. You know, it's a very good pick up and play game, especially when you get to the skill level that I am, where, not to brag, but I'm pretty damn good at this game. So, and it's a co-op, so you can, you're using your skill to help everybody. But would I have liked this game enough if it wasn't Deep Rock Galactic? Now, I would say that it is probably true. If this was just another generic space theme, it probably wouldn't have even got my interest at first. But I would argue, especially compared to something like Dune, that with Dune, I swear you could probably take that theme off and paste a new one on and it wouldn't be too difficult. But this one, because it's based off of video game IP, there was a lot of thought put into how the characters obeyed, what you're doing in the game, all the different aspects of the video game are represented mechanically in this one. So I think this would be a much trickier try to just replace it with a generic space theme. But certainly that helps. I'm not going to lie. You know, if this did not have the Deep Rock Galactic theme, if this was literally just Space Dwarf mining the board game, and it was just, you know, a bunch of unnamed dwarfs going up against random critters or something, then, yeah, I'd agree. I don't think this would have got the traction that it did. You know, we got pulled into this because it represents an IP that's popular, but because they did such a good thing of representing the IP, then I give it a little bit of slack, you know, because at least they didn't just paste on the IP for no reason. I mean, you want pasted on IPs. Let me tell you, let's see, Naruto. Okay, so Naruto Shippuden and that. It's one of my favorite animes that I've watched. And yeah, really cool, like the anime. But then you get this stuff like Naruto Shippuden deck building game. We know what deck building games are like when they just say deck building game. They are usually horribly generic and they just have IPs pasted on them for the sake of IPs. Well, this wouldn't have got me interested to play this game, regardless of the fact that you shoved Naruto on the box, because I kind of know that deck building games or whatever. Other ones, I don't know, let's see, I'm trying to think of other IPs that have been bolted on. If we go Marvel Dice. So we got Marvel Dice Masters, Dice Throne, Dice Masters, there's something just called the Dice Game. I mean, to be honest, actually Dice Masters is not a bad example, because if this was just a generic dice game where you took like dice with symbols and built them up or whatever, then I don't think it would have got anywhere near the popularity it did unless you made them all Marvel characters and then link the abilities and stuff like that to the Marvel characters. Definitely this one is an aspect where a generic theme wouldn't have worked, and the Marvel IP certainly made this one. But I think that's kind of like the argument you could see both ways. There are some games where you can argue that, yes, the IP is the reason the game did well. There are some situations where you can say that the IP helps, but it doesn't matter. And I suppose this is kind of where the hard bit comes in, because, I could think that maybe Doom would never have worked if you didn't have the IP. Deep Rock Galactic potentially would have been the same thing, but you argue that because the theme is so well represented, it would be a lot trickier to not use the IP there. And then we've gone to the other extreme where deck building, dice game, whatever, with a generic IP is not going to matter. I mean, let's face it, let's take, there was a game called Minecraft, wasn't there? Well, there's been several. So we got Minecraft Builders and Biomes, we got Minecraft Heroes of the Village, Portal Dash, Minecraft Card Game ? Not sure why it's got that, but all right, let's have a look. So this one was, okay, so what we got? Minecraft Builders Junior, whatever. Okay, so let's take a look at the original. So 2019, Minecraft Builders and Biomes. Minecraft is one of the most popular video game IPs that exists on the planet. So much so that they're doing a movie, which I swear looks terrible. I don't have an interest in Minecraft. I've never played Minecraft. The movie looks like it's trying to basically pull a Jumanji, but with less good characters. I mean, I like Emma Myers. She's lovely. And Jason Momoa can be funny, but Jack Black is very hit and miss, although Jack Black was also in Jumanji. So, you can tell it's basically just rehashing it. But, that's a load. This game's not exactly popular, is it? I mean, it's ranked 1705 overall, which is actually fairly good for a game in that. But I haven't seen this played anywhere. I've seen nobody put this on the table. I haven't seen any families with it. I've seen nobody have this game, despite the fact I'm seeing what clearly look like gamers playing it. Was that a publicity photo? I don't know. But is it good? I mean, it's published by Ravensburger, which doesn't help because that doesn't exactly scream popularity with hardcore gamers. But is the game any good? I don't know, but I haven't seen Minecraft fans going doolally over it, despite the fact it is based off Minecraft. So, in this case, did the IP make a difference? I think you could probably argue, no, it didn't really. But, would IP improve some other games, maybe? Well, let me take one of my other favourite games, literally played it the other day, Sentinels in the Multiverse. Now, I love Sentinels in the Multiverse. It's about superheroes. Now, they've invented their own kind of lore, but that's their own invention. It's not really an IP. So, would I have loved this as much? Well, I already love the game. Would it have been better if it was based on Marvel? Maybe. I mean, it certainly would have been quite cool, but then we already have Marvel Champions on the shelf. It would have, and I realised the picture's not up. There we go. Yeah, so Sentinels in the Multiverse. Marvel Champions is done by Marvel. It's a different game, and I enjoy that one a lot. Not as much as Sentinels, though. Sentinels has been in my top 10, sometimes my #1 game of all time for so long, whether in its original version or this new version, which is definitely the one to get. But it's generic, well, not generic, sorry. It's made up heroes. These are not... these are original heroes. They're not based off an IP, and I still love the game to bits. Maybe if it was based on Marvel and DC, maybe I wouldn't like it as much. I don't know, but, maybe I would like it a little bit more, just because I could say I'm going to take Doctor Strange into this combat and do this instead, but then a lot of the times I'm comparing these people. I mean, Bunker looks a bit like Iron Man, and Tachyon is basically the Flash. They're blatantly sort of half parodies of particular superheroes. I mean, this is literally practically the Superman, Batman, Iron Man, the Flash, and whatever you want to compare to Absolute Zero. I guess that would be, what's his name? Is he called Frost or Frost Zero? Or is he just called Zero or Chill something? I forget. What's he called in in The Incredibles? As I, wife, where's my super suit? It's like, what's his character? Or was it Frozone or something? It's something like weird. But, it's basically that. So, This game would have maybe been better for me if it used an IP, but it didn't really need it. The game stood on its own merit. So it does go to show that you don't need an intellectual, and I realize I've been saying the word IP and not actually saying what it means, but it's intellectual property, so hopefully you got the gist of that. But the idea with it needing an IP is, a false one. It doesn't need an IP to be popular. But going back to the whole Dune Imperium thing, I jumped into Sentinels because it was superhero themed. I didn't know, just didn't have an IP. It was just made up superheroes. I didn't care. I jumped into it and I loved the game. Would I have looked at it more if it was Marvel? Maybe, but I didn't need to. But I would argue something like Dune Imperium did need the theme and so benefited from that. Okay, let's have a look at the top 100 games. Browse all board games. Let's have a look at the top 100 on Board Game Geek. Let's forget about where things are ranked. It was a different story. But let's look for stuff that is based off an IP, so an intellectual property. All right, here we go. War of the Rings 2nd Edition. Would this one have been as popular if you didn't have the IP? I think the IP certainly helps. I think the fact that this is Lord of the Rings certainly gets people interested to try it. But I think the game is good enough to stand on its own merits that it didn't need the Lord of the Rings IP. But then the thing is, what you do in the game in terms of the factions and getting Frodo to the Mount Doom and stuff. Is it Mount Doom or is it Mount Doom? Mount Mordor? I forget. It's got Mount Doom, is it? I forget. God blimey, it's been so long since I watched Lord of the Rings. But does it say Middle Earth? Jumping in. Political track, War in the Ring. Come on, Sauron, Shadow Armies. Come on, somebody tell me and get me out of this. Oh my god, yeah, is it? I swear it is Mount Doom, right? I don't know, that just sounds so... whatever. The idea is, though, is that this game does have mechanics that are based off the IP it's written on. So, you could argue that this game would just be any old generic face-off game if it didn't have the IP. And I'd probably side towards that argument. You need Lord of the Rings for this one to work. Honestly, I don't think a lot of people would have looked at it if it wasn't, and so it has become quite popular as a result, but providing you're into 2 players now. Star Wars, perfect example, actually. I mean, Star Wars games, Star Trek, anything that is super, super well-known and mainstream. Would a lot of these games work if they weren't? And I'd like to think that the IP does carry a few of these games. I mean, what's the recent one? The Star Wars deck building game, which is basically just a rehash of Star Realms. Now, Star Realms already worked as a great game, so you could argue that maybe you didn't need an IP. But then, if somebody just made another generic rehash of Star Realms and gave it its own IP, would you have really latched onto it as much? Other than the fact that it had Star Wars in the title, and let's face it, you don't need Star Wars in the title. The Star Wars deck building game doesn't have any mechanics in it that mean it must be Star Wars. So, that's the example where I don't like them using IPs, because it feels like the IP is just there to carry the game if it makes no difference to the game. See my earlier argument with Deep Rock Galactic. You need Deep Rock Galactic to be the IP in that one. You don't need Star Wars in a lot of these ones. But Star Wars Rebellion, I mean, it's got its popular events. I think Star Wars Rebellion would have been fine if it wasn't themed on Star Wars. You could have pasted any generic space theme over it, or any other space IP, really. I'm pretty sure you could even make this a Dune game, really, if you tried. But it's, it works as a Star Wars game, and it certainly is a very good game, very popular. But, yeah, the IP, I think, certainly helped to get this one known. And I think that's kind of like what most of these intellectual properties are designed to do. They're not designed a lot of the time to make the game better, although, like in D-Rod, they kind of do. They're more designed to get people to want to look at it in the first place. It's essentially a marketing tool when you boil it all down. And, I mean, I wish that more people would try to use the IP properly and not just use it as a carrying tool. I mean, it's one step away from being like Sony Pictures with their whole, like, where they've hung on to their Spider-Man villain license and then produced all those really bad movies, Madam Web and Craven and, Morbius and some of the Venom. Well, to be honest, none of the Venom movies were particularly good. They just had their highlights now and again. So, they hung on to that license and just made god-awful movies just to keep the license. And now we're at the point where we're sick and tired of them, that we don't want to see any of them because the IP's not working anymore. But what else have we got on here? So, those aren't IPs. Dune, so we've already got Dune. Doom twice in the top 20. It's the same freaking game. But Seven Wonders Duel, Brass, Nemesis, Clank. I mean, these aren't IPs. So where's the first IP? I mean, Arkham Horror. Okay. Arkham Horror. I mean, the Cthulhu mythos. That is certainly an IP that does drag a few people in. Although you could argue that a lot of people are actually getting turned off by this IP because it is everywhere. There are a lot of games out there that use the Cthulhu mythos without needing to. I mean, you've got Arkham Horror, the card game, which is a very thematic, story-driven game, uses the stories and the characters and the lore, and does a fantastic job of it. On the other hand, they also made a Love Letter Cthulhu game. Where is it? Lovecraft Letter. Lovecraft Letter is fine. I think the madness mechanic both works and doesn't work in it. It's kind of a weird story. But yeah, you took a micro game of Love Letter and pasted the IP on it, and it's basically a card bluffing / deduction card game. Yeah, not sure it was needed for that. So, kind of an example of when the IP is kind of not needed. Let me put Arkham in the box, though. What else from Arkham could work? Let's have a look. So you got Arkham Horror, Arkham Horror, Arkham Horror, Arkham Horror. I mean, it's all called Arkham Horror one way or the other. The problem is it's showing all the expansion packs. Arkham Express? Is that a Cthulhu game? Yeah. Arkham Express is a cooperative dice game working together to close gates and eventually defeat the Great One. Wow, does that look horribly generic? I mean, it's ranked 21,924. But oh god, that does look horrible. But hang on a minute, did they literally just copy and paste the writing and the font from Arkham Horror 2nd Edition? Because that looks exactly like it. Well, that's kind of weird. But yeah, kind of an oddity in that respect. But what else was I just thinking about? Something came to mind in respect of like IPs used or something, and I wanted to. Oh yeah, actually, let's give an example of where the Arkham one does work. Actually, Unfathomable, and to another extent, Battlestar Galactica, its predecessor. So let's give some love to both here, because I mean, I think Battlestar Galactica is too long for what it is, and I've never watched a single episode of Battlestar Galactica, so I don't get the lore behind the characters. All I knew is that people hated Gaius Baltar, so in the first game I played of this, I played him just to see what would happen, not knowing anything about the character. But it's not something I feel like I want to go back and watch. But actually, this is actually a good example, because the original Battlestar Galactica, very popular, but I don't think you could have made this game work if it didn't have Battlestar Galactica on it. I think the fact that it represented the characters, the fact that it represented the story arc of being chased by the Cylons or whatever, and like jump driving to a new part of space, and the whole "are you a Cylon, are you not?" I think, yes, you could argue you could have made that into its own non-IP thing, but I think the IP really drew people in here. You needed it to be Battlestar Galactica, and that's why it was really popular. Because, case in point, as I was thinking about Unfathomable, Dark Moon sprung to mind. Because Dark Moon was meant to be the BSG Express. It was kind of like the short version of Battlestar Galactica. Now, Dark Moon was average at best. Yeah, it didn't quite meet the mark on that one. I mean, it looks horrible. It's not a very nice looking game at all. But it tried to do this in a shorthand version. But at the end of the day, it felt very generic, but also the dice mechanic felt like a forced version of bluffing and betrayal. Like sometimes you just had bad dice and there was nothing you could do about it. And this one never took on. I mean, people really didn't latch on to this one. I mean, what is even... get my cam back on. What did it even rank as? Dark Moon... What's it ranked as? 1491. That's higher than I thought it would be. But still, people don't really talk about this one at all. And then we move on to Unfathomable. Now, people mostly still prefer Battlestar Galactica, but there are some people who actually prefer this Unfathomable one, and I would like to try this at some point. I want to see if it's any good, but it's definitely going to be an event game, and I'm going to have to know how to play it ahead of time. It's going to be one of those things, but I would like to play this. But this works with the Arkham theme, because you're on a ship, and it uses the deep ones. Now, the deep ones, as far as I'm aware, I'm not an expert on Arkham lore, but they I can't remember if they infect you or it's just something about being close to them. It's just like a horror supernatural thing. But basically, people start getting infected, quote unquote, and become deep ones. So you notice skin changes, you notice colorization differences and ways of behavior. And so the whole thing of like, are you on my side? Are you not? The setting, the fact that you've got these deep ones in the water sort of causing havoc and that works. But this is using the Arkham lore, and I think making it fit the game very, very well. Now, if you made this a generic IP, like no Arkham lore, and you tried to remake Battlestar Galactica as generic theme, whatever, guarantee this would never have got any traction whatsoever. You know, I mean, this one is still not overly popular. I mean, some people really love it, but it's not exactly, you know, best game ever type thing. But yeah, come on. You take a game that is thematically sound, like the Battlestar Galactica board game, and then don't put a decent intellectual property on top of it, you would have just died a quick death and nobody would have cared. You know, certainly this one failed at its mission to make it shorter than Battlestar Galactica, because that's what they claimed it would, but as we know, Fantasy Flight is unable to ever make a game short because Fantasy Flight games doesn't know the meaning of short. They just seem to make games bloated in terms of their length. But, you know, still want to try it. But yeah, that, you know, this theme and IP works with the game just like it did with Battlestar Galactica. So, let's get a drink. Here we go. There we go. So yeah, interesting little topic discussion. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on the subject. So by all means, if you're watching this on YouTube, get your comments down below. Do you think that intellectual properties are the main reason a lot of games get traction? Are there examples of games where you don't think the IP mattered? Like, you know, whether it was on there or not, the game was still really good or really terrible despite it. However, see previous point, you know, would it have been anywhere near as popular if it, because I think that's kind of the more aspect, actually. Rephrase. I don't want to talk about if the game is good, okay? Whether you love Dune Imperium or hate it doesn't matter at this point, you know. I don't hate Dune Imperium. I just find it average. I think it's horrendously overrated. But I'm talking about the intellectual property. Would Dune Imperium have got the same level of popularity and traction if it wasn't tied to Dune? And I want to see other examples of other games. So other games with intellectual properties, would they have been as popular if they didn't have the IP? Or would they have been more popular if they didn't have the IP? Like, would it have been better if they didn't bother trying to tie it to a specific intellectual property? And now there are situations where the intellectual property is used fantastically. So I've mentioned Deep Rock Galactic, and I've mentioned Battlestar Galactica, and to an extent Unfathomable. These are examples where the intellectual property works. Video games are pretty good for this aspect. I mean, This War of Mine. If you've ever played the This War of Mine board game, particularly with the second expansion, The Days of the Siege, yeah, pretty much I don't think that would have worked anywhere near as well if you didn't make it This War of Mine. But the fact that This War of Mine is a good game and it, like, the board game just sells that theme, you know, is another example of it working. Just looking on my wall at the moment, actually, is there anything else I can see that's IP? That's Star Wars. Well, Star Wars Outer Rim. I don't think I would have really got into Star Wars Outer Rim as much, you know, it's still on my shelf over there, if it was just generic space theme. I mean, if you made Star Wars Outer Rim, you could argue is kind of like a more better version of something like Merchants of Venus or something. And it's like, well, I didn't care about Merchants of Venus, you know, I found it meh, average at best. It was fairly dry in that, but yeah, you throw Star Wars into it and tie it to bounty hunters and stuff, and I love Star Wars Outer Rim. It's one of my favorite games. So yeah, it definitely has yeah, I think the intellectual property is an interesting discussion point. So what are your thoughts? Let me know. And I look forward to reading some of those comments and responding when I can. So anyway, thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you for getting me over the 25,000 sub mark. I do appreciate it. If you do watch and like these videos, then please sub. If you haven't already, I would really appreciate it. I think that bell that you can click on that notifies you of more videos that I've done is still a thing. I don't know, but if it is, by all means, because I do put out a lot of content, despite the fact this is a hobby. And yeah, good things to come in 2025. So as much as I wasn't the biggest fan of 2024, too many bone dry Euros dominating 24, which I think a lot of people say 24 is one of their best years because they like a lot of those dry Euros, whereas I don't. You know, hopefully 25 brings us a little bit more theme, shall we say, or some more interesting settings than just generic Euro. Although I saw a thread recently where somebody posted out, like, which anticipated games are you looking for in 2025? And I've never heard so many generic titles in my life. And I'm like, oh no, we're still in the bland, dry Euro territory, aren't we? So who knows? But here's hoping that there's going to be a good 25. I probably will do a top 10 anticipated games list for 25 at some point. Whether I'll do it as a top 10 list or just make it a podcast episode, we'll see. But I need to do some research and actually look up some of these 25 games and see. It's been very busy. But yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in. Take care. Remember, it's only a game, and I'll see you on the next episode. So bye-bye. Take care. Love you all.